gone all proper hardcore at the moment, hasn't it? Let's click some buttons. Let's click buttons. Let's click buttons. Ooh. There we go. There we go. Ta-da! It has occurred to me I need to click some buttons in other places. Just making sure everything is up and running as it should be. That goes there. There we go. Just pressing buttons, which let people come in, of course, because we've just hit stuff. Da, 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 da. That's all gone there. Few people answering the warm-up question, of course. Wildest result of last weekend can be in any division, because, like I say, there's a few interesting results that happened last weekend, and we are definitely going to talk about them as we've got the whole kit and caboodle. Just having a check just to make sure things are happening, just because. Make sure a few others are okay. Everything's working, at least. That's what we like. Does feel like fighting the algorithm a little bit at the moment, which is a little bit of a pig, but we do what we can. Oh, blimey, I've just seen the time. I wasn't just going to move something from around my feet so I don't kick it by mistake whilst I'm trying to do the show. Guys, gender fluid and all beyond the binary. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 PM and welcome back to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, here once again to take you through the weird, wonderful and wacky world that is British ice hockey. We cover the absolute lot of it, all the way from the Elite League all the way down to the bottom of NIHL 2, as well as the SNL and the WNIHL, from Leeds to Lee Valley, Belfast to Bradford. If you want it, you can get it here on a Wednesday night. Thank you very much once again for joining everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Do keep sticking in your thoughts about the warm-up question this week, which is your wildest result of last weekend. I will say, though, like I said, fighting the algorithm a little bit. If you're watching live, go share this out. Let's get more people in, because I obviously put it on a bunch of different places and platforms as well. But the more individual people who share it means more people see it, means we get more people coming in. That'd be really awesome. Just like I said, just looking at some of the analytics, I am fighting the algorithm a little bit at the moment. And it's not a case of like, I'm going to stop because I've not got people watching. Not on that kind of level, but I'm just interested to just see if we can get a few more people to push this out. What change that has in the background, that'd be really, really awesome. Either way, we need to do the housekeeping before we kick on with too much, because there's a lot to talk about from last weekend. Goals, actually, lots of them. Some in 1 or 2 games, and some across the entire league, as the Elite League certainly started off with a bang on Saturday, if nothing else. But we'll cover all the main bases that we need to before we kick on too much with any of the news. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Your number one source for all things related to British ice hockey. Of course, in the box thinking, my unique, such as it is, insights from the commentary position high atop the Guildford spectrum across this year. That is the best way to keep up with what I see on a week-to-week basis. And like I say, none of the other commentators do as much writing as I do, so I wanted to give my perspective from a slightly different thing, using a bit of hindsight to try and break down what we've seen that week. Of course, a great first home game of the 25-26 campaign proper for the Guildford Flames as they beat the Nottingham Panthers inside 20 minutes, pretty much. So that's all up there, and that's what we're going to be doing throughout the season. And of course, the other big series that we do on Banners on the Wall is Hockey Stories, which tomorrow night, brand new Hockey Stories coming to you guys. And like I say, bit of an esports focus this one. Really excited about it. Great interview. Really loved interviewing the person that we speak to about it, and you can tell they're prepared because they even used WeTransfer to send me the photos for this one. That's how good this one is. But that's coming out tomorrow night. So it's been another busy week here at BOTW. So of course you've got all the other bits. Our preview to all of British hockey with contributions from Andrew Day and Harley NIHL updates. That's all there on the website bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Of course, and with the other good thing, YouTube, because YouTube is really, really helpful in bits and pieces. I'm looking to see what I can do in terms of trying to simulcast onto Facebook It's proving a little bit problematic only because of stuff I need to install and just the processing power of the laptop that I use. So looking at it, if anyone's got any grand ideas, please do let me know, because I've got an idea I think can make work without, but I'm trying not to blow up my CPU at the same time. But either way, we are here, YouTube, on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m, which of course means all the usual bits and pieces. Please, if you haven't already, do subscribe to the BOTW YouTube channel, trying to get that as high as possible to start getting towards maybe getting like adverts and stuff on there, just getting things into people's feeds and stuff a bit more. That'd be massively appreciated. Of course, down if you like I said, subscribe, like the video, share the video, check out the links as well in the description of the video, because that's got the links to all of our socials. The link to Lee 3D Lee, where you can get like 3D printed bits and pieces like the puck and the sign, as well as the link to our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Never going behind a paywall. All that's there for is to help keep the lights on and keep the wheels turning, pretty much. That's how that works there. So like I say, if you enjoy what you see and you'd like to contribute, please do. Buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. But if you don't have money, don't spend your money on me. Use your money for more important things. But what you can do, like I said, like stuff, share stuff out, just because, as I like to say, it keeps the algorithm hamster happy, fat, and fed. And then the other great thing, of course, is because we are in YouTube, that means the chat. As we're here on a Wednesday night at 8 p.m, comments, questions, comments, thoughts, and feelings, anything you want to throw in there as we're going through a week's worth of British hockey, stick it in there, and we'll have a chat about it. Because this is not and has never been a monologue. Always try to get people's views and everything like involved in it, which means we need you. So stick bits and pieces in the chat as. And so on and so forth. It'd be amazing. Do a GoFundMe for a new PC and share it with the Ice Hockey World. With all you do, I'm sure you'll get donations. So here's the problem. Here's the problem with that, Dave. So what to do things with more power would probably mean getting a desktop rather than a laptop. And the problem I have is that so as you can see, BOTW Towers, I generally will stream out of the library. This is sort of the second downstairs room in the house. There isn't the space to put a desktop PC like that in a room like this. The best place for that is upstairs. Now, I don't have a very big house, and I have a child who needs to sleep. So I'm thinking about what I do with it. Because ultimately as well, like I say, I'd much rather people give stuff rather than sort of, I'd rather people give because they like the content and they want to contribute rather than saying I need to. So like, for example, if the PC blew up, I'd maybe think about going down that line. I don't need to at the moment, so I don't feel kind of super comfortable about doing that. A great suggestion, and I really, really do appreciate the fact that you think so much of me, Dave, that people would want to do that. But like I said, I'm going to try alternative methods first, if that's all right, and then kind of work it that way. Like I said, I think I've got it, and I think I can make it work in terms of restreaming it, but I just need to I need the time to sit down and do things. And as the season is starting to kind of like progress and the wheels are turning and like my processes for getting things ready for commentary are improving slowly, I think it'll be easier going forward. I'll work it out. I will work it out eventually, and that will obviously help a little bit as well if I'm able to be on two platforms at the same time. Not doing Twitch, I'm old. But yes, either way, let's have a quick check though, of course, because we do have one game ongoing right now in the Elite League, which has hit the first intermission, and the Glasgow Clan are 2-0 to the good against the Manchester Storm. Devon Sidoroff and Brett Newman have found the back of the net there for the Glasgow side. I believe actually, being as how they're owned by it, that's on Premier Sports tonight. So what we'll do before we start, because actually, like I say, we've got more graphics this week, and Max is back, and also a slightly small, like I say, interesting bit that we'll talk about in a little bit, which has solved one of the problems that we had last week. Where are we though at the moment? It's Wednesday the 17th of September. So of course, the Elite League season has now begun. I've obviously written up my bits and my thoughts from the weekend from Guildford versus Nottingham, which was Sunday. Went really well, I think, as well. I was probably a little bit too harsh in the moment about my own performance, I think. I know I sort of tweeted out that I felt, I gave myself a pass, but, there was definitely things I could do better. I think it's gone better. I think it actually went better in hindsight than it did in the moment. I'm still just getting used to the idea of doing the same things week in, week out. I'm not a great person I'm a good person for very routine, but a routine that's quite loose. And actually doing commentary to this level it requires far much more structure than I'm generally used to or comfortable doing. Now, of course, the last couple of years, where there's been no Bison, and I was kind of freewheeling through British hockey and kind of doing what I wanted when I wanted in my own time. Like the freedom and the structure came from turning up on a Wednesday night to do the streams, right? But now this is sort of very different. But this is all again part of that challenge, sort of challenging myself to not just do this on a whim or do this once in a blue moon, but to show up every week and be able to kind of be able to do this to a high quality. I'm definitely not the best at it. I'm 100% the newest at it in terms of doing play by play on a weekly basis. I am essentially the one new person to join the Elite League sort of crew of commentary this year, and also as well I've got to do play by play and the sort of colour by myself because I'm a one man show in Guildford. So I won't lie, I've been feeling quite tired at the end of games. But again, a chunk of this as well is just getting used to it again. Getting myself into a routine of doing everything again, and also as well. I don't know whether the folks who are watching who are parents feel this as well. You feel really tired, like a week or two back into them being at school because you've not had to do much in the same way during summer, and it's all very very different again. So it's all feeling quite strange and quite different, but really enjoyed it. Very very bizarre game on Sunday, like I say, just an absolute wonder star of a period for Guildford, especially off the back of a very tense, very tight game in Sheffield the night before, where they then just kind of fell away at the back end, and Sheffield did what they needed to do there. But the Guildford looked brilliant and much better than they had done in any of their pre-season games. 5 goals in the first period, rattled Nottingham, put the game out of sight by the first intermission, and spent 40 minutes just holding the opposition at bay. And that's a good thing, I think. A lot of people, you sort of look at the media predictions, you look at fan predictions, and everybody kind of has Guildford kind of in the middle of the pack. Some people even reckoning they'll finish as low as 7th. I'm not massively convinced by the 7th, but I think what they can do is that if they can play themselves into good positions, we're looking top half rather than bottom half, as it were, at the moment. Certainly I think no Guildford fan is talking about the league title. I don't know if you haven't, do go check out the Heated Take, which is kind of the new Guildford Flames fan podcast that a few people have started. Really, really interesting to hear some takes from Guildford fans, because Guildford as a fan base has always traditionally not been very vocal in terms of putting out not a lot of content and stuff like that, not a huge online presence from the fan base. But there's something to be said about getting some of these different perspectives. For example, their perspective on how Chase Pearson played for Nottingham was very different to my perspective on how Chase Pearson played for Nottingham, it should be said. But hey, as we always say here, disagreement is not disaster. It doesn't matter. It's all just chatting about our favourite game, the best sport on earth, which is ice hockey. We should probably mention all the somber, solemn stuff off the bat. Just because I think it's important to get it said, because of course we were greeted with 2 bits of news today. One less good as well. The news came out today that former Manchester Storm player Wade McLeod, who'd played in Germany and played across North America, unfortunately has lost his battle with a variety of sort of health issues. He had brain tumours in the past. There was a GoFundMe set up not too long ago, it's sort of about a year or so ago, to kind of help with some of his medical bits and pieces like that. Unfortunately, now he has passed away at the age of 38 years old, leaving behind a wife and 2 daughters. Life is hard, man. The world is a really, really tough room, and and it's one of those things where you have to think about, everything just becomes quite sharp focus really quick when you see somebody. I'm 41, and I have a son, as many of you know, and this man is 3 years younger than me and has 2 kids, and he's just not there anymore, and it's quite a surreal feeling. So we send our love and our light to the McLeod family, to people who loved him, and we just rest well, Wade, wherever you get to watch it from now. Just enjoy the view and everything there. The flip side, which we do kind of need to talk about, was the good news today. Picture, and we talked about him quite a lot over the years on BOTW bits and pieces, is Swindon Wildcats netminder Tyler Perry. Of course, if you haven't already, the news is out that Tyler has had his operation. He was said he was having to take an enforced break from hockey because of a tumour on his lung, having had issues with cancer and tumours in the past. Played I believe it's the 2022 NIHL Division 1 playoff weekend with a tumour in his spine because he's a proper hard man. But yes, the news is out today that Tyler has had his operation. All the tumour's been taken out, and the little bit of his lung that was attached to it as well. All out, in good spirits, awake, rocking and rolling, which is fantastic news for all concerned. In situations like this, hockey, colours don't matter too much in hockey. As a community, the worldwide hockey community is very, very large, but at the same time, it's very, very small. And when something happens like this, everybody kind of rallies around and clings together. So great. So on the day, we got some pretty sad news. We also get some pretty encouraging news as well. So we wish Tyler all the best for his recovery. The talk was that he'd be back within sort of weeks rather than months. So of course we will see, because it's had pretty serious surgery on the thing that you need to breathe, and breathing is hard, and so on and so forth. But it is what it is on that front. We rock and roll, and we will hopefully see Tyler back on the ice before too long. Yes, Charlotte. Yeah, hopefully. I believe my understanding is that the hope is he will be back sooner rather than later. We're potentially even hearing this side of Christmas. Nothing confirmed, of course, but we'll see what happens there. Alistair, don't recognise your name. Thank you for joining the party. Having a colour commentator gives the play-by-play guy time to breathe. You need one, even if it's someone just to fill the gaps whilst you breathe. It's a conversation I've had in the past, and Guildford would rather at the moment have one person rather than two, which has worked out quite well personally for me. But it's a conversation to have. There are a couple of places that have one person. The majority do have two, but it's not my decision to make on that front. And like I say, it will get easier. It will get easier, I think, on that sense. And I think what I generally am quite good at, and actually weirdly, I think doing the What's Current stream has helped, is the ability to kind of process and take some of those things and get them out of my mouth. Now I realise, and regular viewers will tell people, I'm not always very good at it, but I'm kind of getting into the habit of doing it. And I think the one thing I think people have told me that they quite like is the fact that because I've got quite a broad hockey knowledge base, that I can generally find a way to say something of relevance at the right time, even if I need to stop and pause for a little bit. But also as well, actually, the one thing I don't think anybody needs is people constantly talking, occasionally actually having a pause and just seeing rather than hearing, and the only thing you hear is the ambient noise. Isn't a bad thing for me personally. Dave has put in the chat about Matt Petgrave. Yes, of course, the news today from the folk at Inside AHL Hockey, the understanding is that Matt Petgrave, having been with the Crown Prosecution Service having declined to bring charges against Matt Petgrave, who of course had been on bail post the incident that sadly saw the loss of the life of Adam Johnson. The CPS declined to prosecute, feeling there was no realistic chance of a prosecution. It should be said as well that the public opinion of the majority of British ice hockey fans was that it was a freak accident. It should be said that there are some people who do not share that view, and I would disagree with them for the most part. But a lot of talk that Matt Petgrave will be returning to the ice this season. We talk with sources telling Inside AHL Hockey that he will return to the ECHL and be icing for the Indy Fuel. The release has agreed a contract to sign for the Indy Fuel. How much he plays remains to be seen, but we will obviously, like a lot of places, keep monitoring that situation. And given the fact that no criminal charges are going to be brought, he should be allowed to continue his life. That's the nature of the justice system here in the United Kingdom. I don't know I don't look too much at where people watch the show from, and obviously it works different in different jurisdictions. But there is, like I say, from a British hockey perspective, we obviously understand why why he may not want to play back here. But the fact is that there are going to be no criminal charges against him for what many people believe is an accident, and some people are very cynically and very horribly thinking is something worse. So Matt Petgrave should be allowed to continue his career if he can find the means to do so. and we will keep monitoring that and see what happens with that situation. Either way, let's talk, given the fact that I think we are still in the period break in Manchester. He says, quickly smashing through everything. Nothing else I can see at the moment, apart from Telford announcing that they've got a game in Nottingham at 7:20 in the Div 1 bits, which is kind of what we all knew. So no extra news there. So let's have a look then at the results from last weekend. We'll start with the Elite League and the National League as we head into last Saturday. All five games, were all scheduled to face off at the same time, and then Cardiff's bus broke down at the first roundabout outside of Cardiff, so their game got slightly delayed, but some interesting results to keep people on their toes. The Clan, of course, who are playing right now and lead against Manchester, 3-1 winners over the Five Flyers, the start of the new era. Not quite getting off to the start that they wanted for Max Mabrea and Jamie Russell. Sheffield defeat Guildford by 5-2. That game was 1-1 after 40 minutes, and the Flames have done a really good job about playing a really tight defensive game and then ruthlessly punished in the third period by the Steelers, and also a pretty solid net-minded performance, it should be said, from Matt Greenfield. Jake Kugler can feel slightly aggrieved. I think he probably scored the best goal this week. His short-handed goal against the Steelers was incredibly good and didn't even make it into the top 5. So make your own jokes. And while Nottingham, they might have wanted that bus to break down a little more, in Cardiff not have even made it all the way up to Nottingham, because, as you can see there, not a great result for the defending playoff champions. Panthers were 3-1 up in this game at one point in the second period, and the Devils score in the second to make it 3-2, and they score 5 unanswered goals across those one and a bit periods for the Devils to win 6-3 and take the points back to South Wales. Manchester get their first win of the season on the board. They end up with the empty netter at the end there as well to defeat the Coventry Blaze by 6-4. And then probably the biggest shock result in the Elite League from Saturday was Belfast, who've obviously had a really, really tough time in the CHL. A nightmare draw against some real top-end sides. But they come back home, and, well, I think if you'd watched The View from the Bridge last night, even they used the phrase, the Giants stink it out their own joint, and they lose by 7-4 in the Challenge Cup against the Dundee Stars. Mark Lefebvre apparently bowing to no one when it came to Saturday night in the Elite League. Into Sunday then, and it was a maximum point weekend for the Cardiff Devils. They were 2-0 up, so credit to the Sheffield Steelers for clawing their way back into this one. But the Devils take it in overtime. Brandon Estes with the overtime winner. And if you haven't had the chance to see Brandon Estes with your own 2 eyes, or even on highlights, you can tell this guy is a very, very good hockey player. He is going to cause a lot of problems for teams across this season, it should be said. Dundee then get a maximum out of the weekend. They beat Glasgow by 6-2. So after the first weekend, Dundee top of Challenge Cup Group B. Fife, a 0-point weekend for them as they lose 4-1 at home to Belfast, who got some sort of recovery after being humbled by Dundee the night before. Manchester, well, they lose, but they do they win the split of the weekend, coming out of the weekend with 3 points. This one was a back and forth monster in Coventry. The first competitive game that Matt Robson hasn't played for the Coventry Blaze since coming across to Britain to start last season. Deshaun Stewart starting his first game as a professional, and the Blaze end up taking it in overtime. Matt Gleeson doing the hard yards before setting up Alessio Luciani for the winner. And then there's where I was, and if you want an in-depth view of the Guildford Flames beating the Nottingham Panthers, you can get that over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. 5 goals from 5 different goal scorers, all at even strength in the first period on this one. Hell of a game, really interesting and entertaining, and interesting as well to see Guildford, rather than putting the foot on the neck a bit more, which I personally feel that they would have benefited from doing. Instead, they trust their own processes and try and keep a team at bay, holding down a team that a lot of people expect to finish much higher than they do. Though it should be said, last year Guildford got the better of the league series against Nottingham. Paul Dixon has had success coaching against Danny Stewart. So the fact that they managed to pull out a win here, not a surprise, but the nature of the win, definitely a surprise. Back to the drawing board for the Panthers this week. Of course, the other game that I haven't done a graphic for because it was all by itself, was one of those rearranged Challenge Cup games, of course. Fife's pre-season going in the bin when their Romanian opponents, Corona Brasov, couldn't get into the country. So their weekend's games, there were going to be early Challenge Cup games against Dundee, have been converted. One of those was Tuesday night in Dundee. Well, they came out of the gate with a bang and then fell immediately flat as the Fife Flyers win by 4-0 in Dundee. Fife on the board for 25-26, and a huge win and a shutout win as well for Shane Owen, who after last year deserves many good and many shiny things. We then head into the National Division, which which last weekend was still in its pre-season phase. But Romford, who had a few big defeats, or certainly got absolutely shellacked by Milton Keynes the weekend before, got shellacked at home again. Ashley Tate's Peterborough Phantoms with the 8-2 victory down at Ron Valley Way. I know we have a few Romford folk who are probably watching now. Would love to get your thoughts in the chat there. At the world's most versatile arena, Solway, who of course are going to be playing lots of away games to start the season as the Dumfries Ice Bowl is refurbished. It's amazing what happens when councils pay for their rinks. But a 5-2 win for the Seahawks, who've had a good solid pre-season, of course. Those games against Leeds, real tests for them, and now got a solid 5-2 win at home. And the first of that double header in Hull on Saturday. Sheffield and Leeds. Now, we all saw what Sheffield did the weekend before, giving the Edinburgh Capitals an absolute kicking, and a lot of people wondered how things would land between these two. A much sterner test for Slava Kulikov's men, and they take the Knights into extras, but Matt Howlett with the game winner in OT puts the Knights over the line there. And then Swindon, who surprisingly split things with the Basingstoke Bison over the first weekend. A big win in that first game before losing in the second. And of course faced by the fact that Rennie Marr suspended for 2 games for his antics, where he raced down the ice and ended up in an altercation, which resulted in him being suspended for 2 games, punching Max Wright on the floor. Personally, I think Marr got off very, very lightly. I think he should have gotten at least 4. I would have been happy with 4. I'd have taken 3. 2 feels a little bit too light. And of course, with Tyler Perry going off and battling his various things, it meant a first start in his home rink for the big team, for Ben Clark-Leach, the GB under-20s netminder. Of course, not a competitive game, being as this was only pre-season, and did wobble a little bit at the beginning, but grew into the tie and grew in confidence as Swindon pulled off the 5-2 victory. Dean Skins has been brought in temporarily to give some extra net-minding depth in Swindon, as Clark-Leach will return eventually to the Swindon Division 1 Wildcats. And then it was another double-header game. 2 games, of course, to be played in Bristol. This one, the home game for the Pitbulls, but the Bison continue off of their good form, winning last Saturday against Swindon, and then win by 4-2 against the Pitbulls over at Cribbs Causeway. Into Sunday, and it's a double Bison whammy. They were the early face-off in their home game in Bristol, but the Bison do it again, a 5-3 victory over the Pitbulls. Of course, the Pitbulls brought Josh Batch back into the side for this Sunday game. He had been suspended for 1 game for having a few fisticuff-related altercations the week before, but it ended. But either way, not able to have quite the impact he would have liked as the Bison go through their 4 pre-season games, still without a rink, as Basingstoke will now be delayed again in terms of getting it away. So it's going to be more road games for the Bison to start the season, as the games this coming Saturday and the following Saturday at home are going to be rearranged at some point. But the Bison go 3 for 4 in the pre-season against a team against Bristol, who a lot of people think the Bison will be a lower end side and will be fighting for those playoff spots, so they need to beat teams like Bristol. But they also take the scalp of Swindon into the bargain. Swindon, though, as we can see, they only go 2-2 in the pre-season. They lose by 4-3 in Telford against the Tigers. And of course, more controversy coming out of this one as following their altercation, Deacon Fielder and Tomasz Malazinski both sent to the naughty step. I have to confess, on the video I've seen, I'm not really sure. A lot of people talking about Fielder fighting an unwilling combatant, which isn't true, because Malazinski has very clearly punches him in the video. Whether it's about being the instigator, I haven't seen enough video that's long enough to kind of justify that, because a lot of the video cuts in as they're fighting, so I won't comment on that one necessarily. A lot of people saying Malazinski, the way he takes down Fielder, amounted to a slew foot, which is why he's been referred. I personally wonder if these guys will end up with penalty points, and that's kind of it out of this one. Hull's second game against Solway, an even bigger scoreline, 9-3. We've all seen the clip from social media doing the rounds of Emil Svek stepping out of the penalty box and scoring off the back of a nice pass there. But a good solid pre-season for the Seahawks, 2 wins over the Sharks, which is the sort of thing that will keep Matty Davies happy. And then, well, a better result for Romford, not quite as badly damaged as they were at home the night before, but another win for the Peterborough Phantoms, who only dropped 1 game in all of pre-season. They won by 5-1, and they're certainly starting well. The question, of course, with Peterborough will be injuries and consistency, because under Slava Kulikov they've always been slightly aiming a little bit more towards the playoffs. However, under Ashley Tate, he's a very, very different coach, and we'll see what comes out of that. So then we look towards the fixtures in the top 2 tiers of British hockey. This coming Friday, then a couple of more games in the Challenge Cup. Manchester will be back in action in 2 days' time. They take on the Nottingham Panthers at the Storm Shelter, and it's Friday night lights down at the Vindicote in South Wales, the Cardiff Devils and the Guildford Flames. Saturday, then 4 games on the docket in the Elite League, and of course where you can find me, Guildford Flames TV, this Saturday. It's a 6 p.m. face-off at the Spectrum between the Flames and the Coventry Blaze. We will be live from around the 5 to 6 mark. Massively looking forward to this one. Massive amount of friends who are Coventry Blaze fans, and so always really, really special to commentate on your friend's team. But the Flames, both these 2 teams, of course, coming off of losses on the Saturday and wins on the Sunday. Who will be able to take the extra points out of this one? The biggest rivalry in, well, definitely, probably at least in Britain, we should probably say, it's definitely not the biggest rivalry in Europe for anyone's money. The Nottingham Panthers and the Sheffield Steelers will meet at the Motor Point. Steelers coming off a 3-point weekend. The Panthers, of course, 0 points, bottom of Group A to start things in the Challenge Cup. Will Danny Stewart's adjustments do the business against the old rivals? Scottish fun in Group B of the Challenge Cup. Glasgow taking on Dundee at the Braehead Arena, and the Belfast Giants and Fife Flyers will about face from last weekend and meet at the SSE. So that's Saturday, and then Sunday, Sheffield Steelers take on the Manchester Storm at the Utilita. Fife versus Glasgow, Dundee and Belfast, Cardiff and Coventry. Always a big fan of Cardiff and Coventry games from back in the day. Always fun and interesting to see them go at it. I'm really interested to see what Belfast's response is in Dundee on Sunday, given the walloping that they took at home from the Stars. You have to think if the Giants are up and running, it could be a long night for Mark Lefebvre. Can the Flyers get a second win of the season? We will find out at some point over the weekend. And then, of course, they are back. Big shout out to our boy, Max Van Mullen. He returns with our National Division fixtures. Shout out to Max as well, because like I say, one of the things he's doing, all of the graphics you see from Max, who, if you aren't aware, he's a young netminder. He's on a 2-way contract between the Romford Raiders and the Romford Buccaneers in the National Division of 1 South, respectively. Max uses these for his DV, and he uses these for his schoolwork as well. Massively appreciative of the work that Max does for us, and you'll see these back over the course of the year, which is awesome. Saturday then in the National Division, as the season finally begins. It felt like a very long pre-season, because the Elite League pre-season felt very long, and MK were playing before everybody else, and Hull were playing Manchester and all those crazy things. But the time for talk in the National is over. It all begins again. The champions return to the Castle on Saturday night against the Telford Tigers. The Telford Tigers side with Henderson and Thompson in from the beginning. Will they be able to have the same impact that drove Telford into the playoffs? Talking of the playoffs, the playoff champions themselves, they will be quite confident going into this for opening night of the season as they take on a Bristol Pitbull side that's had some adjustments to it. Josh Batch in, John Dunbar in, Jake Bricknell in, but a side as well that's not had the greatest of pre-seasons. Can Bristol spring a surprise at the Thunderdome on Saturday? The Sheffield Steel Dogs and Slava Kulikov's first competitive game as the new man at Ice Sheffield, and the absolutely terrifying import quota they have. And what better way to start than the Battle of Yorkshire? Between the north and the east. Steel Dogs, Seahawks, ice Sheffield should be an absolute belter. And Solway, because as we said, they're starting on the road because they need to. Starting off with one of their longer journeys. The Swindon Wildcats and the Solway Sharks on Saturday at the Link Centre. Of course, as we know, the Bison and the Raiders, unfortunately, delayed until Basingstoke can be fully ready to go. Into Sunday then, and it's a five game docket. The Bison out of action then this entire weekend, which is arguably not what they want after some pretty impressive performances. But Bristol, who've been beaten twice by the Bison, in that immediate, probably what you'd describe as a 4-pointer in this division. Bristol and Solway, who are going head to head on Sunday. The Sharks, of course, doing the rounds. Hopefully, nobody idiots made them go home between those games. Hull and Swindon. This could have the potential to steal the weekend in terms of the two sides. We've got Swindon, as I've said, in my opinion, have entered that upper echelon of teams in the National Division that could and should win something. Hull, well, there's questions over the defence, and I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to say, but Hull have an absolutely fantastic amount of firepower. This game, as I said, could steal the headlines across British hockey this weekend. Ashley Tate's first competitive game as head coach of the Peterborough Phantoms at home then against the Leeds Knights on Sunday in Bretton. A pretty tough weekend all in all for the Knights, but one that they should hopefully, you think they'll be confident about. Romford look to rebound from a difficult pre-season as they take on the Sheffield Steel Dogs at the Sapphire. And then Sunday, Telford, 6:30. The Tigers and the Lightning could be a low-key sleeper. Like I said, I still think that Hull and Swindon could potentially be the game of the weekend, but this one could be bubbling under the surface a little bit. Really interested to see what happens here. Is Tim Wallace's first competitive games on the bench against Tom Watkins, a man who has obviously been standing behind the Telford bench for quite some time. We'll pause there for a second or two, just to come back to the big screen before we go talk about the other bits and pieces. Before we talk about the NIHL, before we talk about the SNL. Just making sure that we've not missed any news, because of course, before we head into Division 1, of course, a couple of big games over the next couple of weekends, because the Welsh Cup is back this weekend and the following weekend between the Cardiff Fire and the Deeside Dragons. Deeside, of course, retooled, look pretty strong this year, and we'll talk about the pretty crazy weekend they've had recently. But Cardiff, of course, will want to avenge last year. It's a fantastic thing that this fixture is back, in my personal opinion. I love these kind of little things. In the same way that we're getting the Christmas Cup between Billingham and Whitley. Whitley now the Warriors have joined the Scottish League. Plenty of exciting and interesting things there to do. We will just quickly see whether we have news out. I assume they are back underway now, and it's 3-0 to the Glasgow Clan. Ryland Schwartz adding to the Storm's misery just 3 minutes into the second period, and the Clan are actually now on a power play as we talk. So that's going to be potentially could be a long night for Manchester in that one. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, keep sticking them in the chat as I quickly pull up the next bit I'm going to talk about. Because actually, before we get to the bits and pieces for it, starting next week, and it's only because unfortunately we just weren't able to quite get it in time for next week. What's that, Jamie? Are PI and Bison confident the Wink will be ready for on October the 4th for Bison versus Tigers? I've not heard them confirm anything in any direction, so I'm not going to say anything, Jamie, on that front. What was I saying? But yes, one of the things, of course, we talked about last week and the start of covering all the fixtures as best as we possibly could was the lack of anything, the frustrations of the website from the SNL. Now, probably born off of the fact that we've had NIHL North updates as well. What we have is Connor the Puck Collector. If you're not familiar with Connor the Puck Collector, based in Scotland, and Connor has started SNL updates as well, and Connor has started doing match graphics and bits and pieces like that with all the match results. Starting next week, Connor has very kindly said that we can use his bits and pieces from SNL Ice Hockey updates to put on the stream when we're talking about the SNL. I've managed to carve out the table, but folks, in what I like to do, pull people up, push people on, give people a bit of a platform, and this is all a massive collaborative element. Anyway, you guys sticking stuff in the chat, Max's graphics, other people doing bits and pieces as well. So the ability to help showcase somebody else's stuff as well. And like I say, we like to keep tabs on absolutely everything. And with the SNL certainly having some really interesting elements to it this year with an English team in it, it's awesome that we're, so big thanks to Connor. All of his graphics will start coming in from next week is the plan. And should have a lot of fun, providing he's in a position to do it. And of course, some news out of the SNL today, and that is the Paisley Pirates have announced the signing of Craig Peacock. Of course, stepped away from his role and stepped away from playing for Solway and stuck to the GM role, and then stepped away from the GM role. We've not heard much out of him for a little while, but of course, the best ones can't stay away. I'm convinced Craig Peacock's attempting to become Steve Moria 2.0, but he has now joined the Paisley Pirates of the Scottish National League. He only played a couple of games last year, scoring 4 points in 4 games for the Sharks. So it should be a decent addition to the firepower from the Pirates. Although it should be said, not a terrible weekend for Paisley. A 6-1 win for the Pirates over the Kirkcaldy Kestrels at the Braehead Arena on Saturday. A good start as well for the Edinburgh Capitals, who are now in their first league fixture, beating the Solway SNL Sharks by 4-1. Aberdeen with a 9-2 victory over North Ayr. So the good times didn't last for the Wild in that sense. Although, of course, despite shipping 9 goals, still have a positive goal difference because of their absolute walloping they gave Kilmarnock the week before. And Kilmarnock, well, it didn't go well for them. They did score away at the league champion Dundee Rockets, but the Rockets are very much firing on all cylinders to start their title defence. Dundee 18, Kilmarnock 1, your final score from Saturday in the SNL. Just the one game played on the Sunday, and that was of course, being as a Sunday, because who loves to play on the Sunday, is Whitley Bay, and it was a 7-0 win at Hillheads for Whitley and Solway. Now the final score of that counts towards their ties against each other in the Scottish Cup, because the Scottish Cup is being played on sort of an aggregate knockout style basis, and Whitley and Solway, the two southernmost teams, have been drawn against each other. Make your own jokes on that one. But what we can do, because even though it's impossible to read the fixtures on the SNL website, it's not impossible to get the table, which of course we've had a few teams play some games, which means we actually have something at the moment. And well, a lot of people questioned why they were doing it, but 2 games in, it's a pretty solid start from Tony Hand and the Whitley Warriors. 2 games played, 13 goals scored, 3 goals and only 3 goals conceded, meaning that they are ahead of the Paisley Pirates on goal difference to start things off. But of course, as we can see, a couple of teams have only played 1 game, namely 2 of the favourites. Dundee have only played 1 game but have a goal difference of plus 17 because of giving Kilmarnock a shellacking. Aberdeen are 1-1 off their first 2 weekends, of course, losing to Whitley first time out, but winning this weekend. Edinburgh's win against Solway puts them firmly in the middle of the pack. North Ayr dropped from first to 6th, because of course they shipping 9 goals, but it has put them firmly in the middle of the pack, and goal difference wise they're in a good place. Kirkcaldy have lost. They've got 3 teams all on 0 points. Kirkcaldy have lost both games, as have the Sharks, as have the Kilmarnock Thunder, who after 2 games have a goal difference of minus 26. 4 goals scored, 30 conceded. Now, my understanding is that they're kind of in a transitional period in Kilmarnock. A lot of youngsters playing, trying to pull things through, and a lot of teams have done it over the years. They kind of have to eat gravel before they can spit sand, as it were. And it could be a tough year at the Galleon Arena. And of course, one of the things we do know is the upcoming fixture this weekend between Kilmarnock and Edinburgh is off. That is because there's an issue with the ice pad in Kilmarnock, meaning that game will not go ahead. What we're hopeful of is that things will get sorted in Kilmarnock and we'll be able to get that fixture rearranged as soon as humanly possible. What we're going to try and do, because as I said, the Scottish National League website is a pig to try and understand. So we're going to see if we can get the fixtures up over the I'm going to try and get the fixtures up from the SNL. Because they will be on the... just going to try and use what we can here on the phone. There's apologies for trying to concentrate at the same time. We've got 20... let's see if we can find something there. So Kilmarnock versus Edinburgh we know is off. Kirkcaldy. So we've got Kirkcaldy versus Solway. That's a 6:30 PM face off in Fife. North Ayr versus Whitley on Saturday. Paisley versus Aberdeen is on Saturday as well. This genuinely is just absolutely appalling as a website, and they really, really need to fix it. Whitley are at home on Sunday to Kirkcaldy. Is what we're going to say. Is what we can get out of that. Apologies, makes terrible viewing, but it is what it is on that front. Right, what we will do. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything anybody wants to chuck in very, very quickly. We're just going to scoot back and just double check the Glasgow-Manchester score. Manchester on the board. Manchester on the board. They've literally only just scored by the look of it. I can see that there was a penalty against Glasgow. So Manchester might have scored this one on the power play. They have not. They've actually scored it 5-on-5. Joseph Nardi getting the goal from what we can see there. Nardi from Gary Hayden, from Tyler Heinem to get Manchester on the board. So at least breaking the shutout there of Sami Itakallio for the Clam. I have just realised as well, I have not come in here with my water, which was a really, really terrible idea. Hey ho. Either way, let's have a quick squiz there, and we will move ourselves across. Having done the SNL, let's have a chat about the rest, about the NIHL, and the fact that we had a good week's worth of fixtures in at least in Division 1. Again, not much in South one, but we'll make those jokes in a little bit. But of course, still nothing from Billingham. Billingham not in action until this coming weekend in the league. So they had those games against Whitley and then had 2 weeks off for their madness. But one of the teams that people have been keeping an eye on and are very interested in is what would the Telford Tigers 2 do, stepping up into Division 1 after so many years of dominance in Division 1, having stepped up from Division 2. And if you can see there, no big surprise. Vladimir Luka in amongst the goals. Finn Howes in amongst the goals. Jason Silverthorne in amongst the assists as they knock off the Widnes Wild by 7-4. Though it was pretty tight, and Widnes were 3-1 and 4-3 up in this game before Telford at the end just went, no, we're not doing this, and we're getting out of here with all the points. Thank you very much. This was after Widnes got their win to start things last weekend. Tristan Grimshaw, Flynn Massey and Jonathan Williamson with the wild goals for the Tigers. 2 for Finn Howes, 2 for Vlad Luka, 1 apiece for Taylor Stanton, Dan Mitchell and Dan Harrison. Jason Silverthorne with a 3-assist night. Finn Howes 4 points on the night. Vladimir Luka 2+1 to start things off there. Matt Byrne and Luka Tsadri facing quite a large amount of shots there. 44 one way, 49 the other. Not the best of periods at the end there from Luka. 4 goals and 21 shots. But hey, keep going, young man. It'll all come eventually. No game sheet from Solihull versus Nottingham, but we do know the result. We do know that Solihull beat the Lions by 5-1. Joe, of course, Joe Scutts from NHL Stats Wordpress.com, who produces these fantastic box score documents. If you can help him out and give him the game sheets that are missing, it would be appreciated. But either way, Solihull getting themselves off to getting a good solid win over the Lions. And then D-side. A lot have been made about the D-side Dragons. Would the defence be any better? And when they had back-to-back 10-7 games against 10-7 games against Telford in pre-season, people wondered what was going to happen, and we did wonder whether the Scimitars, with some of that extra investment from the Steelers Steel Dogs organisation, what would happen. And the answer is, well, the D-side Dragons turned up at Ice Sheffield and kicked the ever-loving snot out of them. Burned by the fire are the Scimitars, as the Dragons go absolutely mad. A hat-trick from Jake Witkowski on night one of the season. A pretty tempestuous game, as you can see. Sam Keeling getting a 2-minute penalty for throwing the stick into the bargain. Miles Keogh chucked out for fighting in the second period. Jacob Brammer getting a misconduct into the bargain. Plenty of things going on all sides, and ultimately a 14 shot shutout for Tyler Delabatouche between the pipes for the Dragons. Jake Witkowski, as we said, a 4.9, 3+1 for him. Daniel Svadiev with 2 goals. Matt Barlow with 2 goals. 2 goals as well for Reese Edwards, who joined in the summer from Hull, and Ross Kennedy also getting on the board on what was a pretty disappointing night for the Shims. And then the following night, in D-side, it got worse. A 9-0 win, 19 goals with no response from the D-side Dragons across 2 nights to start off their Division 1 campaign. Pretty crazy stuff, all things considered, and a multitude of guys getting themselves on the board. Reese Edwards and Jake Witkowski have 5 goals each inside 2 games for this particular one, and another shutout for Tyler Delabatouche, 22 shots this time, so they did manage a little bit more. Nick Winters facing 62 shots, making 53 saves on this night over in North Wales. Hat-trick for Reese Edwards, 2 goals for Jake Witkowski, and goals from Ethan Mayo, Mike Clancy, Matt Barlow and Ross Kennedy. There's no good things here for the Shims. It can only get better from here. A 6-point weekend as well then for Solihull, as they just about squeezed their way past the Widnes Wild. Although again, Widnes made it tight, scoring inside the last minute to make it 4-3. But ultimately, we do know Solihull, who we expect to be in and amongst the trophy winners at some point this year. It is going to be a big year for them. They were 3-1 up and 3-0 and 4-1 up in this one. Nearly chucked it away, but ultimately in the end, Solihull just a little bit too strong. Lucas Price getting the rarely used holding the face cage penalty, which is always pretty impressive. Flynn Massey for the Wild gets a 10-minute misconduct for incitement, which is, again, a penalty that you don't see very, very often. Lucas Price with 2, and Nicholas Otterson and Louis Allen with goals for the Barons. Alex Parry, Andrew Hopkins and Daniel Haid with the goals for the Wild. And then, probably, irrespective of how good Billingham have been the last couple of years, the league favourites, the Blackburn Hawks, with a 4-0 shutout win at home against the Hull Jets, doing the business across the period here. Gary Simpson, Andy McKinney, James Riddick and Adam Barnes with the goals for the Hawks in this one, as they end up managing to pitch themselves another shutout. 28 shots for Harrison Walker. He turns away the whole lot. Zach Brown making 44 saves is still impressive. Can we also appreciate that Hull's backup is called Sasha Bravo, which is a fantastic name for a hockey player or anybody in a police procedural, it should be said. And then Leeds. Well, Leeds beat the Lions at home. A lot of people wondered what sort of Leeds nights we get this year. This sort of raft of young talent coming through. Usually Nottingham's bag. And well, yes, Alex Rushby on the scoreboard again, getting another 2 goals. But certainly a big night as well for Dara Spafford, having come across and getting himself into the night system. Jonas Bennett on the board as well, and this is off the back of Frankie O'Sullivan becoming the youngest scorer in NIHL history last week. But it's the Knights who get the 3 points on in this one. Really, the Lions not putting out many shots on goal. 25 shots isn't going to win you that many hockey games. But the Knights end up squeaking away with this one. 2 goals, as we said, for Darragh Spafford, and goals from Jonas Bennett, Ollie Wag and Danny Harrison. The goals for the Lions coming 2 from Alex Rushby, 1 from Luke Birchnell and 1 from Toby Fisher. So, next weekend then, just the one game on Saturday, and that'll be in Shropshire. Telford Tigers 2 versus the Blackburn Hawks. Should be a really fascinating game. Of course, that high-powered top line of the Tigers 2 with Silverthorne, Luca and Howells going up against the ridiculous firepower that Blackburn have put together this year. Sunday then, can the Scimitars, who have had a wretched start to the season, can they get anything out of the Solihull Barons? That's a 4:50 face-off on Sunday at Ice Sheffield. Widnes take on Blackburn, so a double away weekend for the Hawks. Leeds Knights 2 will be the first to welcome the champions to the ice for 25-26. They host the Billingham Stars, and then a 7:20 p.m. face-off at the NIC Small Pad for the Nottingham Lions and the Telford Tigers 2. Into South 1. I still can't feel my legs across the weekend. Must be the Luca Tasadri. If you're going to complain about being old, your father and I are going to have a serious word with you. You are close to half my age, child. Do not fight. Do not start this argument with me. Will be my response there, Luca. Either way, into South 1. There's one game. That was it. This is all there is from South 1. And the Solent Devils do what the Solent Devils do. They end up beating Swindon last weekend in Swindon and then travelled to Chelmsford. And the slightly new look Chelmsford Chieftains are beaten again. And the Solent Devils are now 2 from 2, a maximum 6 points from 6. And they were 3-0 up in this game as well. Chelmsford only eventually getting on the board in the last minute on the power play through Alan Lack. Otherwise, Liam Coleman, Ben Locke and Cam Buckle. A 1+2 night for Cam Buckle for the Devils in this one. If you've not seen the celebratory video from the Devils, go find it on their socials. It's hilarious. Shout out to Alan Lack, who had the only goal, which was unassisted, and got 11 minutes of penalties all by himself. But either way, a pretty impressive performance. Aaron Taylor only making 30 saves. Ross Miller making 34 saves. Just a bad night at the office for the Chieftains, of course. And they have, what should be said, one of the better net-minding duos in the division between Ross Miller and Brandon Stones. The Oxford combination there over in Essex. There are some more games this weekend. Of course, we saw last weekend pre-season games between Slough and Streatham, the two sides splitting honours there. But the Jets, the league champions, will be in action this coming Saturday. And what better way to start? Because it always happens this time of year. Solent, Slough, down in Gosport. It's a 5 p.m. face-off down on the south coast. 5:45 on Saturday. Challenge Cup only this game. But the old enemies renew rivalries down in Kent, the Invicta Dynamos and the Chelmsford Chieftains. The Chieftains are then in league and cup action the following night. They head over to the Link Centre to take on Swindon Wildcats 2. And Streatham, more firepower. Vanya Antonov back in South 1. And he and the Red Hawks are in Challenge Cup action against the Invicta Dynamos. Heading up then into North 2. And well, we wonder whether we said Sutton needed to respond after their tough game the week before. There's no game sheet. I think Bradford would rather they lost that game sheet when you look at the score. Sutton winning 15-3, having lost against Billingham in that cup game the other week. Oh boy. We said someone was going to be on the end of a kicking eventually, and they were. Either way, we do actually have a game sheet though from the game that happened on Saturday at the Skydome. The Sheffield Titans, who've had a pretty solid start to the season. It does say Sutton Sting there, but it's definitely the Titans. The Blaze lose their first game of the season, and the Titans keep their push going. It's been a pretty good start for them. They win by 4-2. It should be noted there, of course, a goal, and the first Coventry goal of the season being scored by the captain of GB Women, Jodie Alderson-Smith, still playing for the Blaze as well as doing bits and pieces as she will be for the WNIHL's Solihull Vixens. But either way, it is Sheffield who end up pulling away here. Mark Illingworth with the game winner. Tom Humphreys firing into the empty net to take the 3 points back to Ice Sheffield for the Titans. And then the Titans, well, they've done it. They did it again. A maximum 6 points on the weekend. It was a tight one, 4-3 down, heading into the third period against Altrincham before Harry Illingworth and Scott Howes doing the business to give the Titans a 5-4 win against the Aces. A really, really solid start from the Titans that they should be very impressed with. The trick for them now is to keep pressing on. Well, the Buccaneers, like I said, they got that scalp of the Sting in the Cup, but they were unable to do the business at home against the Coventry NHL Blaze. A good response from the Blaze following their home defeat the night before. They travel up to the Forum and manage to take the scalp of the Buccaneers by a score of 5-2. Billingham going a goal up in the first period, and then Coventry break out 3 goals in the second, 2 goals in the third. Charles Coney, Nick Alley, Connor Whelan, Dan Kent and Harrison Sumner doing the business there before Stephen Wallace takes a little bit of the shine off. And you can see here just the raft of penalties that the Buccaneers take, including covering the puck, which is another one you don't see that often. Which led to Connor Whelan getting a penalty shot goal. Sam Dowd kicked out for fighting in the second period. Netminder interference. James McCabe there taking 3 back-to-back penalties for tripping, then holding again. And Sean Griffiths given a misconduct for abuse of official, and then given a misconduct again at the buzzer for all the fun and games in that one. But yes, either way, good response there from the Blaze to that one. And Deeside Dragons 2, the renamed Deeside Ducks are now Dragons 2. They get themselves off to they get their first win of the season in the Lions' first game of their campaign over on the small pad at the Motor Point. 6-2 the final score there. A pretty solid start there from the Dragons' second side, which includes people like James Parsons and Charlie Spridgeon. 6 goals on 30 shots for James Guest. A bit of a tough night at the office for him. 27 saves from Leo Hyman in goal for the Dragons too. So James Parsons with 2, James Shaw with 2, and then goals from Cody Ogden and Charlie Spridgeon for the Dragons. Goals for Nottingham Lions 2 coming from Jake Fisher and Connor Bennett. So next weekend then, a more full Saturday than a Sunday. Saturday, 3 games. The Deeside Dragons 2 will look to take that good form they've got themselves going out from Nottingham and try and do that at home against the Billingham Buccaneers. 5:15, 5:30 at the World's Most Versatile Arena. The Kingston Sharks are back in action for they start their 25-26 at home to the Bradford Bulldogs. Can Coventry capitalise on that good win at the Forum as they travel across to Manchester to take on the Altrincham Aces? And in one game on Sunday, the Bradford Bulldogs take on the Sheffield Titans. Can the Titans keep their winning run going? And then into South 2, where there's been a few bits and pieces going on, and not a great start for the Solent Junior Devils. Chelmsford will be very pleased. It's not an easy journey down to the south coast from that part of Essex, but they're the ones who took the points back. A 7-2 win for the Chelmsford Warriors. This game was tied at 2-2 at 36-21 before Chelmsford went absolutely mad and just blew the Devils away from the late second into the third. And a pretty comprehensive performance. Some names as well that have started back again. Oscar Evans back on the ice for the first time in the better part of 2 years off the back of his injury, and the Junior Devils roping in a few ringers from the level above as well. Goals for the Devils coming from Charlie Wedge and as mentioned, Oscar Evans. And a slightly short bench Warriors side though doing the business. George Beckett with 2, Matt Tilbrook with 2, and goals from Eden Rolfe, Taylor Chard and Lewis Shelton. A fantastic performance from Alexei Koklov. 54 saves on 56 shots is a pretty impressive record to come out with. And then the big rink over at Ali Pally, and a winning start to their campaign for the Haringey Huskies. They send the Oxford Rising Stars to their second defeat of the campaign with a 7-3 victory. A pretty comprehensive win in the end from the Huskies in front of a bumper crowd up there in North London. Of course, the Huskies looking for a bit of redemption last year after a tough season. A bunch of new additions, and some of the names you'll recognise there, like Josh Ely Newman, like Ruskin Springer Hughes, guys who've joined from Division 1. And one of those names, Casey Wilson, immediately on the score sheet, a 2+1 night for him. Other goals as well, 2 from William Novick, Connor Smith on the board, as well as Stuart Appleby and Martin Jazz. Goals for the Rising Stars coming from Jacob Smith, Griff Eden, Parish and Theo Bundock. He says just clicking a few buttons. What have I done there? Pressing all the things. There we go. And so one of the bigger noises in Division 2 across the season. They didn't get the league title last year. They got virtually everything else, and a good start for the Peterborough Phantoms. They handily dispatched of the Cardiff Canucks by 8-1. Canucks did lead. Sam Davies getting them on the board, first, but then 8 unanswered goals from the Peterborough Phantoms too. Like I said, they could be staring down the barrel of this being their last season in Division 2 if things go their way and they are able to step up to Division 1. Ultimately, Ryan Bainborough, 1 goal on 30 shots is a pretty solid piece of work. A tougher night for Mackenzie McNamara, but she does giving a good account of things. 8 goals on 54 shots, given some of the offence that we know this Peterborough side can generate. 2 for Nathan Pollard, 2 for James White, 2 for Connor Pollard, and then goals from Craig Wallace and AJ Herring for Phantoms 2. And we wondered what Milton Keynes would be able to do in Division 2, and they came within a whisker. But they end up losing out. MK, in the 41st minute, were 4-0 up before the Milton Keynes Thunder fell victim to the old adage. And what do we say here on the BOTW What's Current stream? You can't count out the Invicta Mustangs. The Mustangs, inside 19 minutes... In fact, they scored. In fact, it's actually within 9 and a bit minutes, go from 4-0 down to taking the game to overtime. A hat trick. Sorry, it's not a hat. It's an effective hat trick, but 2 goals from James Steadman and goals from Sam Oliver and Ed Gibson take this game into overtime. And eventually, Jake Steadman gets the winning penalty shot. The MK Thunder are on the board. It's a point for the Thunder as they start out in their new life in South 2. But the Mustangs come roaring all the way back as the Thunder learned the BOTW lesson from playoffs a few years ago. Goals for the Thunder in this one's from Sam Peters, James Muller, and 2 from Marks Canis. And then in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup, that competition is back for this year. A 6-5 win for the Haringey Huskies over in Kent against Invicta. Invicta were nearly clawed it back, scored 6-3 down with 9 minutes to go, come within touching distance, and James Laming getting a goal at 59-18 to give them a chance, but ultimately Haringey putting himself in a good position in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup to start, although they won't be happy with having let Invicta back into this game so many times. So what happens next weekend? 2 games on the Saturday. Lee Valley Lions in the Eddie Joseph Memorial Cup, of course, named for the Lee Valley legend himself that we know will want to make a good showing, and they take on the Invicta Mustangs at 5:30 over in North London. Bristol Pitbulls 2 start their league campaign. They take on the Chelmsford Warriors at 7:30 p.m. over at Cribbs Causeway. And then on Sunday, 3 games, 5 p.m. in Gosport for the Solent Junior Devils and the Invicta Mustangs. The league champions are back in action. They start their 25-26 campaign at the Spectrum. It's the Guildford Phoenix, and the first visit against them of the MK Thunder. And 6:15 down at the Vindico. Free entry, of course. Get your tickets in advance for the Cardiff Canucks and the Oxford Rising Stars. Well, there we go. That's the NIHL. We'll do the WNIHL momentarily. We will just have a quick squiz and have a look at just double check what's happening in Glasgow between the Clan and the Storms. 3-1 at the second intermission. So you said that goal for the Storm. Joseph Nardi from Gary Hayden from Tyler Hynam to get the Storm on the board. Time to do something with that and turn it around. We're just double checking the news. Just making sure nothing else has happened. As I said, though, not on the fixtures there, but on Saturday, the first leg of the Welsh Cup between the Cardiff Fire and the Deeside Dragons. I'm just going to double check that one because I'm pretty certain Cardiff are at home first. In my head, yes it is. It's this Saturday. It's also the home opener for the Devils. It's 7 p.m. at the Vindico between the Cardiff Fire and the Deeside Dragons. They will then about face the following Saturday, where they will play in Deeside on Saturday the 27th. It will be a 5:15 face-off because everything is a 5:15 face-off in Deeside, irrespective of what you would like it to be. But yeah, so Saturday 7 p.m. at the Vindico. If you're in the area, go check that one out. Bit of Battle of Wales should be awesome. Andrew, don't you worry, my friend. Don't you worry. You add the context in there because it will be massively appreciated. But we can if I press that, because we've nabbed the graphics. Let's talk WNIHL, and we'll start in the Elite League. Slightly contrasting results because the Queen Bees, well, they gave the new girls, the Bristol Huskies, a bit of a lesson on Saturday over in Slough. An 8-0 win for the Queen Bees. Of course, who've recently announced their new development alliance with the Slough Jets, and then from 8 goals to not many goals at all, a tie on Spectrum Ice between the Guildford Lightning and the Whitley Bay Beacons. So what that means, so here we have the first sort of preliminary table of the WNIHL Elite League. Understandably, the Queen Bees are at the top at the moment, and Solihull haven't played yet. But with a +8 goal difference, it's a relatively good start for the Queen Bees. Bristol at the bottom, the only teams who have played 2 games. They have a goal difference of -10 to start things out. Oh, if I do that, there we go. There's the actual table. Would have helped if I'd done that one. And then we'll have a look at the results from elsewhere across the WNIHL from this weekend. Up in the north, another tie. Kingston and the Caledonia Steel Queens battling out to a 2-2 draw. Cracking result, that one, for the Steel Queens against last season's relegated side from the Elite League. Not quite as close over on Merseyside. The Sheffield Shadows thoroughly putting the Widnes Wild to the sword by a score of 16-2. Div 1 in the south. A couple of shutouts, and both away teams coming away with the spoils. The Firebees winning by 2-0 over in the Link Centre against the Swindon Top Cats, and the Chelmsford Cobras had a slightly longer journey over to Milton Keynes. They win by 6-0 against the Falcons. Div 2 in the north. They've got, of course, the Valerie and the Elizabeth conferences in the respective Division 2s this year. In the Valerie, the Sheffield Shadows second side took on the Kingston Diamonds second side, and the spoils went to Hull in this Battle of Yorkshire. Final score there of 8-3 in favour of Kingston. And then the Leeds Roses travelled up to Whitley Bay to take on the Whitley Bay Beacons too, and were able to head back down the motorway with the points in their pocket. 4-2 the win for Leeds in that one. In the north 2, Elizabeth, a solid win, an 8-0 win for the Manchester Storm women's side against the Caledonia Steel Queen Bees. Bit of a mouthful of a name there, ladies, but I'm not going to argue with the women wielding a sword. Into South 2 then, in the Valerie division, a good win for the Haringey Greyhounds, a pretty comprehensive win. They win by 10-3 against the South Sirens. Oxford in theirs is what is essentially as close to the local derby as they get, beating out the Solent Amazons by 4-2. Cardiff sending Chelmsford with a long ride home with 0 points in their pocket. The Comets beating the Pythons by 2-1. In the South Elizabeth Conference, Cambridge Kodiaks 2. Of course, we know that this is their new second team that they've put in. The first team stepping up a division, but the dynamics of Invicta give Kodiaks 2. Well, they don't even let them get 2. Invicta wins by 13-1, and then a good win in their local derby for the Coventry Phoenix. They beat the MK Falcons 2 by a score of 5-2. We'll have a look at the under-16s results as well, because they're all on the same graphics anyway. A 6-all draw in Sheffield in the the under-16s Battle of Yorkshire between the Shadows and the Kingston Diamonds, and a first away game for the Billingham Stars under-16 girls team, but a comfortable win for the Manchester Storm. The score there by 6-2. And then under-16s in the south, a tie over in Slough between the Ice Bees and the London/Haringey Hounds. And then Cats versus Dogs, and Dogs, well, I generally prefer Dogs anyway, but the Dogs won on this particular one. Swindon Top Kittens being shut out at home by the Bristol Husky Puppies by 5-0. So just having a look at the bits and pieces there, Andrew's given us the fixtures for this upcoming weekend. In the Elite League, Streatham Storm and Whitley Bay in South London at 6:45. A couple of tough weekends for Whitley Bay, having to do Guildford one weekend, then Streatham the next. I don't think the schedulers like them much. Maybe helping them get it all out of the way. In Division 1 North, Caledonia Steel Queens and Widnes Wild, as well as the Sheffield Shadows taking on the Nottingham Vipers. In Division 1 in the south, Firebees take on the MK Falcons on Saturday, and on Sunday, Chelmsford Cobras take on Streatham Storm 2. That means we have covered everything, the lot, everything from the very top to the middle to the bottom of British hockey. All of the results have been gone through. We've chatted about everything. That means we shall open the door. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything you want to chat about. We've got a few minutes so we can sit here and chat on. AVFTB aren't knocking on the door because they managed to do things on the right evening. And so, yeah, stick what you want in the chat. Let's talk about anything you want. NHL, CHL, whatever you'd like to talk about. Stick it in the chat. We'll have a natter through bits and pieces. Don't know whether anybody caught the NZIHL 3-on-3. It should be said. Could be which was interesting. Not the most high-paced of tournaments, but I'm not massively sold on 3-on-3. I get why they want to do it at Olympic level because I think it will be a good showcase in that sort of sense for the sport. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned and I like my 5-on-5 hockey, and that's what it is. But if it's going to help get the sport sold, that's fine by me. Of course, rookie camps in the NHL. A few of those games have been knocking about too. Which have been pretty interesting. For folk who use a VPN and don't want to use a certain website to watch games that chucks that causes a lot of pop-ups. If you've got a VPN, worth having a look at the Ice League in Austria. I know. Anthony's a massive proponent of hockey in a German-speaking country. I get that, but there's at least one game a week for a large chunks of this season that's going to be on Austrian. Like domestic television. So if you don't want to pay like €9 a stream and you just want to kind of tune in from time to time, the Austrian version of the BBC ORF has got a game mostly on a Sunday afternoon. So if you're not going out and you just want to watch a really, really high quality game of hockey and you can stick a VPN on your phone, on your computer, on your telly, definitely worth checking it out. I do like that league. It's pretty Austrian hockey and British hockey is starting to become a bit sort of closer in levels. And the Ice League is a good league. It's a really interesting team. So if you like that kind of thing, do go check that out. If you're interested by some of the French teams that came over, I've just got to quickly find my notes that I've made on it. Because again, if you like your VPNs, I've just got to try and find the website. sportenfrance.com. They do seem to have, from time to time, occasional League Magnus hockey on this website, but only works if you're in France or if you're using a French using the VPN turned on for France. But I was able to watch a chunk of a game during last weekend. So obviously French commentary, and I speak zero French, which is of course not super helpful for me. But at least was able to kind of watch it without like 1,000 pop-ups or having to click to unmute bits and pieces and so on and so forth. So that was really, really helpful. Really quite enjoyed that. I like to be able to sort of watch hockey without massive amounts of issues. So so I'm just trying to see if they've got anything coming up on an ice hockey perspective. Nothing in the immediacy that I can see, but they have shown it they definitely have shown it on the website. So definitely keep an eye and see if you can find it, because it will pop up from time to time. Bugbear of mine, and no, it's happened in MK this season. Planet Ice giving ice time to junior teams on a Saturday night between end of March and mid-April, when they know MKL are likely taking the ice for likely playoff games. I suppose the question I would ask is, why have MK not reserved that ice? Because I know there's a lot of movement kind of within EIH about making sure that the senior men's teams don't just completely dominate the ice time. But the trick would probably be for an MK perspective would be to do a deal with the rink and people subcontract the ice out of the Lightning, maybe. But that's the question: is that if they've given them the ice, why didn't MK reserve the ice? Like, if you're Milton Keynes, right, irrespective of the fact that the division is arguably getting closer, if you're MK, you know that bar a mild miracle, you're going to finish in one of the top 4 places in the league, right? And that means you'll get a relatively decent draw playoff-wise. Why not reserve the nights around the time that you'd want to do that? Why not just reserve them when you're reserving all of your league fixtures? The rink know when the playoffs are. You know when your playoffs are. Book the dates. Or They've already done it, and they're just not going to be on the night on Saturday nights. Andrew as well, but there a lot of Swedish women's game. If you like your women's hockey, a lot of the Svenska Spel Damen Hockeyligan. There we go. I'll have a crack at that. But yeah, Swedish Women's League. So if you like your high quality women's hockey, a lot of SDHL games on YouTube for free. I believe as well of course the PWHL should hopefully be back on YouTube this year too. But yeah, certainly at the moment before that starts, the SDHL, the Swedish Women's League, a lot of games going on YouTube for free. Swedish commentary, obviously. But like I say, if you like your women's hockey and you want to enjoy high quality games for free on YouTube, so you can probably just watch them on your telly rather than your phone, go ahead and knock yourself out. It'll be great. Lots and lots of hockey to enjoy on the cheap. It's just a case of finding it is the trick on it. And if you want to pay for bits and pieces, then you do need to pay for bits and pieces. What I am trying to work out is as and when we are going to see if I can. I'm trying to figure out actually from this website when we are going to get more of this on here, because the answer at the moment is it's really hard to tell. All that's telling me is a bunch of things in foreign languages, and I don't speak French, which is annoying. But yes, stick stuff in the chat. What do we need to talk about? What do we want to chat about for the last sort of couple of minutes? Just making sure everything is working still. Yes, it is. That's good. Been relatively comfort. The streams got worked relatively well because tech being what it is, right? But what if you've never streamed before? People have used OBS. I can see everything, of course, down here at the bottom in terms of sort of drop frames. I've not dropped a frame. I've actually not dropped a frame this stream, which is a little bit disconcerting. Everything's working too well. So the third period has now started in Glasgow. 2,800 people on a Wednesday night. It's not bad for a hockey game, I don't think, in Britain. But yeah, so the National Division, of course, kicking off this weekend. If I go, what I will do, if I press that quickly, let's just scoot back. Let's work our way back through the graphics quickly. That's the Elite League fixtures. Let's have a look at Saturday in the National very, very quickly. Well, I'm sorry, Bristol, but I think MK are going to win that one. I think that that's probably one of the easier ones. And you'd assume, especially given the fact that Solway's record against Swindon is incredibly poor home and away, that the Cats are winning against the Sharks, which leaves us the toss-up of the other two. I think Leeds sneak past Telford, but Sheffield and Hull is a bit of a toss-up for me. I'm not sure how other people feel about this one. That one, I think, because that's two very high-powered offences going up against each other, two decent sets of netminders, and lots of defence where you're kind of not 100% sure, although you'd probably lean towards Sheffield, given some of the more historic names in there, and CJ Garcia on the back end. The question, of course, is if Sheffield get pulled into a firefight, can they survive a firefight against a Matty Davies Hull side? That's the one where I think it's probably a bit more of a toss of the coin. A lot of interesting takes on prediction in the National League, especially the top five. Lots of different takes on what order they will finish. I mean, for me, it's a top three of Leeds, MK, and Sheffield, because I think Swindon have now pushed their way with the quality they've got into that upper echelon. I then probably would have a middle sort of two of Hull and Peterborough. Hull, for me, have the higher chance of pushing into that top tier, and Peterborough have the higher chance of falling off. And then you kind of end up with Telford sort of in a little block by themselves in sixth, where I don't necessarily think that they are the best side, but I think Telford will quite comfortably make the playoffs. And then you chuck everybody else in below that of Romford, of Bristol, Solway and Basingstoke. Because from a Bison perspective, the Bison have started well, but how long they go without the rink, what that does to it, just how good is this side that managed to nick a win off of Swindon and then reasonably handily dispatch Bristol. You think maybe the Bison, potentially you stick them in that sort of echelon with Telford, maybe. But Romford have got a lot of good offence and a really good netminder in CC. Solway, when they get their rink back, they might be in a good spot, in a good space. It's really hard to tell. But for me, like I say, it's a top three of Leeds, MK, and Swindon in some order, followed by Hull, followed by Peterborough. Is kind of why I am, and I realise that's not particularly high depth quality analysis, but I've not seen anything out of the other teams that make me think that anything is going to be any different. Like I said, the true wild cards in the division are Telford and Basingstoke. Telford, because I'm really interested to see what happens with a full season of Thompson and Henderson, because they have the potential to put the teams on their back and just carry them. And from the Bison perspective, because Lord knows. And like I said, free hit. It is a free hit in Basingstoke. I think the Bison can make the playoffs. I'm not a Simon Peterborough Anthony for me. I'm not a big fan of Ashley Tate coaching. I think Telford finish above them. I get the concern there, Jamie. I think on that one, because I think as well you look at Tate's coaching results in the division, and it's really easy to point at. But it's also two lower end budget sides with massive historic problems kind of going on. The Bees from both teams having issues from a rink perspective as well, because of course the Bees had their issues in Slough. Not a huge budget to work with there as well, and in Basingstoke of course the budget keeps getting diminished because of of the issues with the rink and all the uncertainty that's going on there. Peterborough is a different kettle of fish. Yes, the rink is not the nicest place to go, but it's a much more established group. And I'm really interested to see what happens there if that group really buys in. Because Tate is very, very big on his structure. And I think actually that will suit Peterborough. Whereas I'm not sure that Telford have the same depth as Peterborough. And that's where I have them finishing above the Tigers for me. Is where it works out. I think Ashley Tate is clearly not a world-beating coach right now. But he has very, very good at certain aspects of coaching. And we've seen him give young guys opportunities that have worked out really, really well. And he knows how to take some players and just really, really give them a role and do well with them. And you saw, arguably, the Bees being a much better hockey team last year because Dom Gabai had Ashley Tate to lean on and give some different ideas. I think that's a big one there. That's Connor from SNL Hockey Updates. We're just sorting things out for next week. There we go. So that's all set. So we will have some graphics for SNL stuff next week, which is really, really awesome. But yeah, as we edge towards the end, because it's 5:30 now, Tom Watkins is the top 4 coach in this league, though. Yeah, but he still doesn't have the depth. Hasn't got the budget and hasn't got the depth. There's the biggest issue. You can do like if Peterborough end up finishing below Telford, I get it. Can Telford finish 5th? That's what I'm not sure about. But yeah, last call. Questions, comments, thoughts, and feelings, and we'll just repeat it again. Like Tyler Perry is a hell of a tough human being. Manchester scored again. Ooh. What's happening in Manchester? In Glasgow. Let's bash that. A second goal then for the Manchester Storm. JD Dudek from Lauren Hewlett from Stephen Johnson. 3-2 at 46:23. So plenty of time for the Storm to come back and cause a bit of a mess there. But yeah, Tyler Perry, what a human being. Been through so much. Fascinating to just see how ridiculously resilient this young man is. Really impressed with him. Genuinely hope he's back on the ice as soon as humanly possible. And I think it'll be a a massive, massive response from the Swindon fans when he does manage to get back out there. Dean Skins, more than adequate backup at the moment. It allows Ben Clark-Leach the freedom to go play back in South 1, get more big minutes there. Allows Rennie Marl, now that he'll be back for the first games of the season, to go and do what he needs to do. And yeah, that'll be a big one as well. Just quickly look at Sunday. Bristol versus Solway, coin toss. Hull versus Swindon could be really, really interesting. I think a lot depends on what Hull do the night before. You think Leeds get past Peterborough irrespective. I think Sheffield will quite handily get past Romford. Telford MK, potential banana skin for the Lightning, but you would normally tip your 20p towards the visitors on that one, I think. But we'll see. Let's come back to there. There we go. Finish off. Yep, last call though, folks. Very much nearly at the end. We are at the 90 minute mark now. But yeah, so Saturday, 6 p.m, just before 6 p.m, in fact, on Guildford Flames TV, Flames versus Coventry Blaze. Looking forward to it. Got everything printed off because I'm actually not back in the office, so I usually print things out to get. So I've got my stat sheets and the like, but I'm ready to go. Quite looking forward to it. Love Kevin Moore hockey. Think he's a really, really interesting coach in terms of what you get. Coventry Chaos hockey should be a lot of fun. So really looking forward to that. Interested to see how the Flames try and counter some of that this year. Venture Matt Robson's going to be between the pipes for this one. So maybe we get Deshaun Stewart. If so, really looking forward to seeing him. Looks a really interesting keeper. So that should be good. No more big news, I don't believe. I've just clicked the button there and I'm still looking at the Cardiff Fire page, which is not helpful to anybody. Nothing else I can see. We will call it there. Banners on the wall.wordpress.com, your number one source for all things related to British hockey. Join me for my insights from the commentary position high above the Guildford spectrum in the box thinking. We'll write to give you a good rundown of every Flames game that gets commentated on this year. Don't worry, I'm in a few other places as well. The Banners will be back on the road at some stage. And then, of course, Hockey Stories, our in-depth interview form pieces. We've gone from the 19th century to the present day, from behind the Iron Curtain into World War II and beyond, but not tomorrow. Tomorrow, we very much kind of look at the here and now. U Sports has had a massive impact on British hockey in terms of its imports. Over 50% of the imports in the National Division this season have a background in U Sports. Over 20% of the Elite League ones do. So why not talk to the head coach of the most unique program in all of U Sports? And the man who said that Riley Brand is a phenomenal hockey player. Thursday night, Thursday the 18th of September, over at Banners on the Wall, new Hockey Stories coming. It's really good. You'll like this one, I think. I really enjoyed doing it. But you've got that, as all of those bits and pieces, as well as the last 14 and a bit years worth of stuff over at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. And then, of course, you've got all the joy of all of our other bits and pieces. Head down to the description for all of the links to all of our socials. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Blue Sky, and all the other bits and pieces. You've got the links to 3D Lee, and you've got the link to our virtual busking hat over at buymeacoffee.com/BOTW. Like I said, it all goes into just keeping the lights on and the wheels spinning around. We're not going behind a paywall. If you like what you get and you can contribute, please do. If you don't have the money, please don't think you need to give us money for bits and pieces if you don't need to. Share things out, like things, move them around. Like I said, feel that we're fighting the algorithm a little bit at the moment, talking about British hockey. So if we can get things spread out a bit further, would be massively appreciated, especially as well as we kind of start encompassing all of the different bits of British hockey. That would be really, really appreciated. And of course, all the YouTube stuff. Subscribe to the Banners on the Wall YouTube channel. Plenty of stuff, not just what's current streams, but interviews from people from the length and breadth of world hockey. All the moves and the movers and shakers of British hockey into the bargain as well. And then, of course, it's Wednesday night here on the BOTW YouTube channel, the What's Current stream, the only live show, in fact, one of the only shows to cover absolutely every aspect of British hockey, from the Elite League all the way to the bottom of NIHL 2, as well as the WNIHL and the SNL, Leeds to Lee Valley, Belfast to Bradford. If it's played, we'll chat about it. And you can join us, of course, next week at 8 p.m. There we go. The Elite League is off and running. It finally catches up with the NIHL Division 1 and Division 2. The SNL has the wheels turning. The WNIHL is rocking and rolling. And finally on Saturday, the National Division joins the party, and all of British hockey will finally be back and rocking and rolling for 25-26. It's going to be a hell of a ride till April, my friends. Great to have you along for the ride. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then wherever you are, please do whatever you can to please be safe. As my friend Scotty Was would say, take care of yourself and someone else. For Banners on the Wall, thewordpress.com, and this Anthony Russell saying stay safe. And so long till next time. Join me on Flames TV on Saturday if you aren't game yourself. Wherever you find your hockey this weekend, enjoy it, revel in it. It's going to be a long few months, and make sure you enjoy every bit of it. Until next Wednesday night for the next BOTW What's Current stream. Have a good one.